Ghost Family Paranormal Talks.
All right, welcome to Ghost Family Paranormal Talks. This is a show that we're going to talk basically about paranormal stuff and our experiences, places we want to go to, and other places that we find fascinating in the paranormal field. So, what would you like to talk about today?
Great question, David. So I think today, this is being one of our first episodes, our first talks. I think it's a good idea to go way back. Where did it start? Where did we get our interest for the paranormal? And then first, I guess, give backgrounds. Who are we? Um, how do we know each other? That sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've known you since I was born. You know, because Ghost Family Paranormal, we are actually a family. This is my brother, and we consist of um, us two. As kind of founders of this. There is really no founder, lead investigator. We're all a family, so we're all the same. So we're both founders and lead investigators with my mom. Um, and we're primarily the main group of Ghost Family Paranormal with us two, or and my mom and our mom. Sorry, we're the main group of it, and then we have my sister and her boyfriend that comes along sometimes, and we are starting with my niece coming as well. She's fascinated in it too, so that's pretty much like well how I knew you, but you know,
And okay, so outside of our family dynamics, everybody kind of participates. We'll have friends that will come aboard too and
yep.
investigate with us. Other groups that will investigate with us. What really sparked this, many years ago when we were kids? What was the precipice to us getting into to wanting to learn more about the paranormal and figure out what's out there?
Well, you remember we had that experience out there in Bedford, where we used to live. And plus, we always used to watch all the shows. Every time Ghost Adventures was on, I was remember watching the first episode of them. And they were at the Goldfield. I think that was it. The Goldfield Hotel is where they started, and watching their episodes and really being fascinated to it. But with that experience in Bedford, that I don't particularly know so much about as much as you because you're older than I am. So you might be
Right.
able to fill in on that one a little bit more than I could. Just it's fascinating. With the experiences that happen to you, and then trying to help people out too is really what kind of wanted us to get into it.
Right. Yeah. So I remember, Bedford. We moved in there. It was a duplex. We lived on the top floor. We had some other tenants that lived right below us. And from the day we moved in to the day we moved out, there was always something going on there. Talking to our other siblings, we found out that all of us were seeing different things in the house, particularly an old man that would be standing kind of behind the TV type area. And then we had stuff that would fly off the counters at us, cars, like remote control cars that would start up. Um, yeah, all kinds of stuff. My little sister got sick and stayed sick for about 7 months when we lived there. No matter what doctor they took her to, nobody could figure out what was making her sick. So that led our mom to kind of go further and investigate in non-traditional means, I guess you would, as to what was going on with us. So we ended up getting hold of a psychic. They came in, talked to her, found that we had some paranormal stuff that was going on there. And then shortly after that, we moved out. But that was, even though it was about a 6 to 7 month, time frame that we lived there, there was a lot of stuff that was going on. Yeah. Obviously, we have dogs, or David has a
Yep.
dog.
Yep. I have it
I
all.
have two dogs, cats, ducks, a bunny, and birds, and kids. So occasionally we may be talking and you may hear something.
Yep.
Like, I may have a little kid run in. We're normal people that live normal lives, so don't mind any of that.
Right.
Um, Sometimes we'll try to cut that stuff out, but we're trying to be real and authentic, so sometimes we'll probably just leave it in there, just
Hmm.
depending on if it gets in the way of our flow or whatever. But yeah, so that's kind of the brief overview of what happened in Bedford. Lots of people getting sick, people getting angry with each other. You'd be fine outside the house. We'd get inside the house, and everybody was angry. Like that level just went up. As a kid, though, you really don't know. Like, yeah, I didn't know what paranormal stuff was. I just knew we had weird stuff that was unexplainable that was happening, and we had no idea what was causing it or what it was until many years later.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what got us all interested as a family in learning more about the paranormal.
Yeah. See, with me, I forget how old I was, but my younger sister, she's younger than me. That's the one that got sick. So, with me, I don't remember too much of what happened there. I can tell you how the layout was of the house. I can tell you, um, that kind of stuff, but I can't tell you anything that really happened there. I remember I had a truck that sat on our dresser because me and you shared the same room all the time, and yep, here she is. Sorry, she's playing with her toy.
No, it's okay.
But I remember being my truck sitting on the dresser and hearing it hit the wall and not knowing what it was, and then finding it on the floor the next morning. And it was, you're like, oh, what happened? Did it just fall off? But I never really experienced too much there, or I don't remember it. I maybe knocked it out or anything like. So did you ever see the guy? Did you ever witness seeing him or
Yeah,
anything
I
like that?
remember when we had talked. I think when we first started investigating, I think Mom was talking to all of us, and I had seen him. Other people had seen them in the house, and nobody was communicating with each other. So, outside of the big things that happened, like the truck hitting the wall, the remote control car that would start on its own and rev on the counter, all the cabinets and stuff that would be open, those sort of things that obviously everybody kind of knew was going on, but nobody was really communicating with each other as to their individual experiences of what was going on until years later.
Hmm.
Obviously, we all knew that our younger sister was sick. Didn't really know. I mean, we were both pretty young at that point. Didn't really know the cause or anything like that, but we knew that she wasn't well. But yeah, as far as I think the biggest thing that would have helped us is if all of us would have talked and been a little bit more open about what was going on in our experiences. That just we were all young, and it just never happened.
I agree with that. Because finding out it years later, into this stuff, because our mom's really what got us into it, because she never really stopped after that day and or the time in Bedford, um, being interested in the paranormal. So she's the one that kind of drove us to, you know, seek this stuff, and find out more about it.
Right.
Not so much this, being scary or anything like that, but just being fascinated and try to understand like what happened. If you kind of believe if a spirit is how they were in real life, they might be so confused or so upset that no one's talking to them or able to see them, that maybe that's why they lash out. So if you can ever feel and find that way of maybe finding their a way of talking to them, maybe things like that kind of stuff would change. And if we would have talked, maybe we could have helped the situation. Because I don't even think
Now,
once we left, right? Once we left, we didn't. He was still there, right?
I'm guessing. I mean, nothing really happened that was malevolent after that. Like no one was attacked, nothing like that. Um, I mean, we did have a paranormal experience at the other house we moved to,
Hmm.
but it was nothing like the house in Bedford. It was very rough. But I want to move on from that a little bit. Let's
Okay.
talk about some other stuff. I don't want to bore people too much with certain things. Now, guys,
Right.
if you have questions, feel free to ask those. We'd be happy to have an open dialogue and let you know kind of what we went through, or I'd really like to hear what you went through as
Oh yeah.
well. If any of you guys need help, reach out. We're happy to help. Um, how about the first time that we kind of got together and did our first investigation? I know it's been a while.
Hmm.
You remember where we went?
Well, I remember. Well, we went to that Kent stage up there. I remember that's the first time that after the thing in Bedford happened, we went to the Kent stage for their paranormal weekend. And I remember meeting all these teams, Tri-C Paranormal up there, Echo Vision Paranormal. You're meeting all these groups and seeing their stuff, and you're like, wow, this is cool. This is cool. And sitting for the demonologist, whatever they call that meeting or whatever that they were having on stage, is and listening to them talk was very fascinating. So I remember us going to like a public ghost hunt. I think it was just me and you that went, and we walked around the city of Kent to different locations. They talked about it, and then we finally ended up in the Kent stage to do like a basically an EVP session with Tri-C Paranormal and Ectovision Paranormal that were leading the investigations that night to do it. So that's kind of like I think the very first like actually going in there and investigating stuff together is what I remember.
Yeah, I think that was. I mean, it was me, you, and Mom that went, and I think that was definitely something that opened your eyes to saying, okay, there's more people out here that are weird, just like us, who want to figure out what's really going on. Now, when we go into places, guys, don't think that we're going in and everything is paranormal. Right? Yeah, we have equipment that we use. We'll get into that a little bit later. Different types of equipment, different types of methods we use. That sort of stuff. We'll cover that here later on. But we don't go in there and say, okay, we know for a fact this place is haunted, and we go in there with that mindset. A lot of times when we go to investigate, something happens, we want to try to debunk that. Like, was that paranormal, or did somebody just close the door? What really happened? Is there some way that we can debunk what just happened, versus saying that everything that happens in a location is always paranormal? So that's the first thing I want to throw out there. I don't want you to think that we're just automatically making stuff up that, hey, this has to be paranormal because we're in some locations.
Right.
So after that event, man, I think we all got together and said, hey, we want to do this again. We want to go to another location. Do you remember where we went the next place after that? It probably was 6 months or so later. Do you remember where we went?
I'm pretty sure it's probably Ohio State Reformatory for one of their public ghost hunts.
Yep.
So we went there to Ohio State Reformatory, and we've probably been there, a dozen times?
At least that.
Never a private because it's a little pricey, out of my price range, but and that's what we'll get into too. Talk about private versus public ghost hunts too,
Correct.
And what's the benefit of going to a public ghost hunt compared to a private ghost hunt at some of these locations. But yeah, we went to Ohio State Reformatory, and if you guys have a chance to ever go there, even there just during the day to take a day tour, I recommend it. The building is great. The history there alone in that building is phenomenal place to go. So I highly recommend go there as one of your places to visit. Yeah, and I think so that's probably where we went next. I mean, we had some experiences there throughout throughout our paranormal time when we went there. Because my mom, she actually became a volunteer there, and she probably volunteered for at least what do you say, maybe a year, close to a year.
Oh, yeah, at least that.
And so we got in good with some of the volunteers there earlier on. This is before COVID and everything like that, and we got into with them, and we had some experiences there, primarily down into the sub basement underneath the solitary confinement. There's like a sub basement where they said the old solitary confinement is, and I remember being down there, and we had a couple experiences. I'll share one, and then he can share his. But I remember being down there, and I'm not one to believe in the phone apps too much. I'm not, I'm kind of skeptical on the phone apps sometimes. But we were down there, and we were sitting down there with two volunteers. I think it was a husband and wife down there. They were the two volunteers, and I think the husband, his grandfather or somebody used to be a old warden of Ohio State Reformatory. So we were down there with him and his wife, and they knew my mom from volunteering. So we were down there, and I think there was another group that came down there with us. So there was 8 of us down there or something like that.
At least.
And I just remember us doing the phone app, and it's almost like the Ovilus, what the phone app was. It's like a word generator. So I really don't believe it, because you can drive down the road with the app and it'll go off. So I'm not But we were doing it, and I'm not a very sensitive person. I think I need to try to, like not open myself up to get attached, but open myself up to an experience. You know what I mean? But when we were down there, all of a sudden that app said goodbye, and on my left side of my body, I felt the hair stand all the way up and static electricity all the way up my neck. And I looked over, and the lady next to me that wasn't even in our group, she's like, "Do you feel that?" And I said, "I do." And at that moment, we're like, "Oh, maybe we should get out of here." It just said goodbye, and I felt something, and so it's like, let's get out of here. So that's kind of my little experience we had down there.
Yep. So, as David said, my mom had investigated or had been a volunteer there for many, many years. And I figured, hey, these spirits kind of knew who she was. And one thing you'll learn about me when I first started investigating, or I still do occasionally, I like to ramble on and on and on and ask questions. And, same question a lot of times, and sometimes it kind of irritates some people. But so I kept asking, same location in the sub basement right below solitary confinement, and it was me, David, my mom, and I think one or two more other people. And I kept asking, do you know who she is? Can you tell me her name? Because she volunteers there. She's there all the time by herself, walking around, turning lights on, turning lights off, unlocking stuff.
Yeah.
So I figured they kind of knew who she was.
Well, he's not
Was on for a
explaining this.
while.
Like, we were using
Yeah,
a spirit box. I don't know if you said that at this time.
I did not.
All right, yeah, we were using a spirit box. We were using the actual SB7 spirit box, and we were doing a spirit box session. So this is what he's talking about with the spirit box, not the app on the phone. So
And we will get into like some of this equipment a little bit, probably with the next couple episodes we do, or next couple talks we do,
yeah,
and go through so you have an idea of what some of this stuff is, what we're talking about. So if you're kind of confused, just stay tuned. You'll be able to pick up with some of these equipment and stuff that we use. But anyway, like David was saying, we were using the spirit box, and I just kept asking. And after a little while, I think it got irritated and told me to F off. And at that point, we just packed up our stuff and we're out of there.
oh
And it wasn't like in a low tone. It was like they were mad
yeah,
and yelling at us to F off. And so we just left. And I don't think we've ever been back in the basement since then. I don't even know if we've been back to the reformatory since then. But there's other experiences we can talk about too in the reformatory, and walking the cell blocks individually and that sort of stuff, and other places that we're going to talk about here in our experiences too, and places we want to go and that sort of stuff. We've been to a few places many, many, many times,
oh yeah,
and then some places once or twice. Really looking forward to going to like Gettysburg and stuff like that.
oh yeah.
Here in the near future, but
I mean, yeah. Well, like he was saying, but the thing is with the spirit box, I know he said we'll get back into that, and it's just what I want to add to his story. The spirit box scans radio frequencies, so you're not going to hear the F word over the radio because you're not allowed to say that. So to have that F word prominent like that come across that, you're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And he's got a lot better with not machine gunning anymore. The questions and asking the same stuff. That was earlier on when we were just getting into this, and you were excited to just be there. And we're still excited to be there. It's every day when you go. You're always excited to go. But back then it was just like, oh man, we're in here. Let's try to get something like super quick. So, yeah. So that's kind of like what he was talking about there in Ohio State Reformatory. And we've had other experiences. We went to Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which is another great place to go. And that place was really fun. That's and I kind of try to peer pressure Joe into doing a lot of different things. So I asked him if he wanted to sit in the morgue on the slab, and we slid him in there. And he did it. He doesn't really ever fight about that kind of stuff, and I think he He did it at another place we went to. He sat on the morgue table as well. And this isn't to like try to be mean to the spirits or anything, but try to, maybe if they can relate to what's going on there, maybe a little bit to what's going on, and also to put yourself out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? To see what you can do, or and experience in those spots. But yeah, Waverly Hills was so fun. And Joe was going to talk about a couple of stuff there, and it is true. You could see shadow figures, and when you're with people and you don't know if the shadow is them or not, it's kind of creepy. I heard a dog bark at the place, which, if you didn't know anything about Waverly Hills, all the windows are open in the place. There is no windows or glass, so it could be a dog outside, but they're supposed to be known as a guy that died with his dog that was thrown down the elevator shaft. And I heard a dog bark. Is it paranormal? We don't know, but it kind of went along to the story though. But like you said, all the windows are open, and there is a active neighborhood underneath Waverly Hills that isn't too far away. So
It sits on top of a big hill, and then as you get out further, there is a community around it. So it is possible, like David was saying, to pick up that ambient noise.
mhm.
Interesting enough, I didn't hear the dog, so that's interesting. Um, and something else you were talking about too, like seeing there's a body chute there. So they told people that died that they actually had a chute built so they could just slide people down and bury them. And if you're sitting there looking down at the bottom of the chute, you can see shadows going back and forth, and nobody should be down there, right? There should be people walking around down there. The other thing that I'll mention is while we were there, as it started to get lighter outside, the hallways started to get darker, which is kind of unusual considering, like he said, there's no windows. It's all open. It was a tuberculosis. One part of it was a tuberculosis clinic or center. But as it started to get lighter outside, it was getting darker inside, which was kind of creepy. You're in the middle of the hallway and things are getting darker and not lighter. But so I don't want to hit people with too much
Right.
on each talk.
Mhm.
But what kind of tips, I guess, what's one tip that you would give somebody that's either interested in doing an investigation or just a tip about paranormal stuff in general?
Well, if you're interested in the paranormal and you haven't really gone, I would recommend looking at a place that you would like to go, and maybe go and do a public ghost hunt there. And the public's, like I said, we'll get into that more in depth and later, but public ghost hunts are good for some reasons, and one of them is if you're new to it, you can go there and you get to meet people that are interested in the same stuff you are. Like, how do you get to find these people that, are going to a haunted or supposedly haunted location? I'll say that. To people that don't believe all the way or a little bit of skeptic, it's okay if you are. That's perfectly fine. Well, you go into these places, you find other people that are like-minded, just like you, that want to go to these places. So it's public one is a good tip to if you really want to go, and basically that's probably a good one right there.
So
what
before
kind
I
of
give my
yeah
tip and we sign off, just one other question
Yes.
in reference to the private events
yeah
or any ghost hunt rather.
hmm
Would you recommend that these individuals that want to either go look at a place and do a private investigation or a public one, do you think it's a good idea for them to do their own research beforehand, or should you go through the investigation and then do research? What's your thoughts there?
I mean, it's a give and take stuff, because the more and more that I do it now, and Joe can contest to this, because I always bother him every time we go to these places. I don't want to hear anything paranormal that when we go to these places now, because I kind of want to feel stuff on my own. Like, I don't want to know that people get scratched in this hallway, because if I go down there and I get scratched, or we go in there, you're expecting something to happen that you already. So if I'm not aware of what's going on, for me personally, it's perfectly fine, because I feel like if something does happen to me and then I come back and tell somebody about it, and then they're like, hey, there's a lot of people that say that. So now it's kind of like a vindication to other people that, hey, this is happening in these places. And I'm not saying that I'm the vindicator of the paranormal by any means, but it's like that's kind of like how I like to do it. But doing a little bit of research of it, knowing the history of the building that you want to go to is I love learning the history of the building. If you can find it, and if you really want to know about, a lot of places have a website that'll tell you some history on the paranormal or whatever. But yeah, I'm not opposed to learning the history part of it, but more towards like the paranormal stuff. At this point in our paranormal stuff that we do now, I don't really necessarily want to know about the paranormal. That's my opinion. Joe could be totally opposite than me. I don't know. I know
Well, that's when we did. They gave a tour, and every time they were talking about something, I would just. I don't want to. I agree. I want to have the experience, and then have them validate us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we've had other people say this. Yes, we've had this happen. And then I guess for my last tip before we end this episode or this talk, would be that sometimes if you don't have equipment, don't worry about it.
Right.
A lot of times you are the best instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that'd be my tip: is you're the best instrument. Sometimes sit yourself down, just be quiet, and experience kind of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else for this talk, at least, and I think we've been going at it for about 20 some minutes.
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of overwhelm people here, but any last word before we sign off?
No, I would just say, if you guys like it, please leave a like. Please comment on any of your experiences and stuff that you would like us to talk about. And we would love to one day even have like a live question and answer session with you guys. And also, too, another thing we were also talking about is going to these places and maybe inviting people along with us.
Yeah.
And, you go to Madison Seminary or something and have people come with us so they can have fun and experience some paranormal stuff too. So that's what I can say is, if you guys want to comment, please leave a like. Please tell us about stuff that happened to you or experiences that happened to you and other stuff that you want us to talk about.
All right, that sounds great. Well, guys, until next time, like David said, leave a like. Excuse me. Leave any comments you guys have for us, good or negative. We accept all comments.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want us to talk about something specifically, we're happy to look into that
Mm-hmm.
And to share our experiences, or maybe even pull other experts in as well to kind of answer those questions that you guys have.
Yep.
All right. Well, until next time, guys, we definitely appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Recording stopped.